That sound kind of speaks for itself, doesn't it, guys? Check out this baby. The Protech Doru. Not a guest blade. You can tell by the location of the button. It's a lefty. And it's all mine. Stay tuned, guys. We'll talk about it a little bit. Hi gang, Rob here. It's the evening of 20 April 2014. Yeah, the evening of Resurrection Sunday. God's blessings to all of you, and God's richest blessings to all of you who believe in the resurrected Christ and his finished work on the cross. May God's eternal peace be yours. Now, let's get started looking at this rather interesting knife from Protech. And let's take a close look at this one. As we talk about some particulars, you're looking at an automatic knife, of course. Pretty much all Protech makes, and they like this construction, the aircraft grade aluminum handle / frame. This one a rather interesting shape, I think, out of the mind's eye of one Allen Elishewitz. See if we can get you a good shot of his logo. Elishewitz design, and what do we have here? Ah, yes. 154 cm steel. And other than their Damascus blades, I believe that is the only steel Protech works in. And boy, do they have it down to a science. So other than that aircraft grade aluminum handle, sort of a nice textured anodize, very similar to that on the Benchmade products. Feels a lot like a 940 in texture, maybe not quite as grippy as a 940, but still kind of a matte finish anodize. I'm sure over a blasted aluminum. Talk about some dimensions for you. This blade you're looking at, a rather interesting sort of, I don't know what you'd call that. Is it a modified reverse tanto like a Benchmade 940? Is it a modified drop point? Whatever it is, it's got a nice long sort of harpoon swedge. The length of the blade is 3.5 inches. The thickness is 0.125. Actually, I'm not sure I believe that statistic from the website. I should have probably measured it, but it looks a little beefier than an 1/8 inch to me. It is saber ground flat variety, so a little more than half the breadth of the blade is primary bevel, and the finish is stonewash. Now they make this blade in a variety of finishes. There's sort of a two-tone finish, not two-tone, but a dual finish with part of the blade satin, part of the blade stonewash. They also make some some DLC coated varieties. This one is all stonewash. It is offered in partially serrated models and some quote-unquote tactical models with handle jimping here and back in this area. We'll get to this as we talk about ergonomics, but I find that kind of unnecessary in this knife. I kind of like this sort of slick, basic the basic profile of the knife. Thickness of the handle is 1/2 inch. If I didn't say it before, the length of the handle is 4.5 inches, so a pretty efficient blade to handle ratio. Overall length comes in at 8 inches then, doesn't it? The weight, I think, for a 3.5 inch fairly stoutly ground blade and a 1/2 inch thick aluminum handle, not really relieved in any way. Let's see if we can get you a shot of the inside here. I think it's pretty much full thickness throughout. But I think a weight of 4.0 ounces, pretty good for sort of a beefy utility / backup tactical blade. How about the balance? I'm going to put my middle finger right in the finger choil area, and would you look at that? Sheer perfection. Can't beat that. Now let's get back to talking about this blade shape and style and grind and what I think this knife is intended for, and the conclusion that I arrive at after carrying it for a couple of days is that the website doesn't lie. It is a military or law enforcement loadout blade, part of a daily loadout for someone who has one of those jobs, and it's designed for utility and for defense. Protech says they make this left-handed model specifically for officers, operators who desire carrying their defensive blade on the offside for their pistol. So most people are right-handed and they might want to carry their tactical blade on their left side. I, as some of you know, am left-handed and right-eye dominant. So I shoot pistol right-handed, and I am a left-handed person, so I guess that philosophy works for me, doesn't it? I think it's rather fortuitous that I am a right-handed shooter and a left-handed knife wielder. I just wish more companies accommodated me. And you guys know that story well. Now, speaking of the steel, the 154 cm, Protech does work almost exclusively in it. They have the heat treat down pat. Might be the best heat treated 154 cm I've ever worked with as a sharpener. Of course, I got this knife in the mail yesterday morning, and last night it was sharpened. No fault of the knife, however. It was as sharp a factory edge, I think, as I've ever gotten. It just wasn't quite symmetrical, especially at the tip. And you guys probably know by now, I have a hard time with tips that aren't perfect. I'm trying to get you a shot of this one as sharp, and there you go. It's about perfect now. I did my standard bevel on this of 15 degrees secondary bevel and a 19 degree micro, and you can see, although the blade is fairly thick and it's saber ground, so the taper of the main bevel has to run down to behind the cutting edge in fairly short order. It's not overly thick behind the edge, as you can see by the width of my 15 degree per side bevel. So although it is a saber ground blade, it gets there fairly quickly and fairly thin behind the edge. It is kind of an abrupt angle, though. The inclusive angle of this main bevel is a little over 12 degrees, so a little steeper than a 940 Benchmade. And as you guys know, that's a pretty steeply ground knife. I think it slices okay, though. I don't know how it would do on an apple or some kind of hard fibrous fruit or wood, but pretty vicious paper cutter. Almost got a full S-curve out of that before my blade bound up. See if we can do it over here. Not quite. Just a little thick as it tries to maneuver. But certainly this 154 cm comes to extreme initial sharpness. which you guys know I like. And I can tell you this, for the amount of effort it took bringing it to that edge, I think RC59 might be a conservative spec. I get a feeling this might be up around 60, 61. Definitely harder. I'm wiping the blade, guys. Hang on just a minute. Definitely harder or more grind resistant than Benchmade's 154 CM, which is pretty exciting to me because I love Benchmade's 154 CM. And it's extremely sharp. Had to work to get it to a polish though. Does not quite come up gleaming as easily as Benchmade's 154 CM does. But I like it. I like it a lot. Just a superb utility shape. If you look at go back to this tip shot again, and kind of look at the profile of that tip. Trying to get the glare out of it. Very thick to the end. Should be extremely stout during any prying tasks, which although this is an auto knife generally regarded as a little bit fragile in the pivot and mechanism area, this one does not seem to be. I mean, that thing is rock solid. No play in any direction. Pivot is fully adjustable, of course, but I get that kind of action pretty fast for a pretty heavy blade with absolutely zero side-to-side play. I will say that the knife shipped faster with a little side-to-side play. And I did adjust the pivot, apply a little blue Loctite, and I don't know, it's probably been opened 60 or 70 times. I'm seeing no movement in the pivot. Just superb. Let's look at the base of the edge here, a point of contention for me and most knife makers. Protech almost got this right, but you can see the plunge grind does extend into my secondary bevel just a bit. I really considered taking this knife apart, extending this ricasso just a bit to fully clear, and that's a great shot. You can see exactly where the plunge grind ends. Just if you're laying your stone over the back of the cutting edge, it does ride up just a bit. I thought of taking the knife apart and extending that for a little bit better forward grip, but we'll do that later, if ever. It was so darn close to being right. And that grip is pretty secure just by laying the thumb in that recess behind the harpoon. I don't ever really contact the cutting edge like that. It's just a nice forward grip. Even in this sort of forward sideways pinch grip, I've got no issue with the cutting edge. Really like it. Let's look at details, fit and finish, and construction. Love the stonewash. Nice and consistent. Very scratch hiding, and sort of lucky it is because there is a big old scratch from the factory. It runs right here on the flat, just above where the bevel is. It's pretty well camouflaged. If you know it's there, you'll see it. If you don't, you probably wouldn't. The machining on the handle is impeccable. Just feast your eyes. Just beautiful, beautiful chamfers. Beautiful the way the frame meets in the middle where the closed portion of the back is. I love how the knife is sort of semi-open. Fairly rare in an automatic. Lets you flush it out if you get gunk in it. I did get a mark on it. This is all me. Nice little scratch. Not quite through the anodized coating right here. That is from the rivet of my jeans, believe it or not. Riding in the pocket closed. Sort of yanking up on the knife. On a well-worn pair of jeans, many knives have been slid in and out of that pocket and kind of got me. Oh well, just gives it a little character. First day out of the box. Oh well. Now I want to talk about ergos a little bit because isn't that funny looking? And frankly, when you first grab this knife, you feel that the handle stops short. and it almost feels like your pinky doesn't know what to do, and it sort of makes you want to go forward to accommodate. I sort of don't think you need to. If you just sort of lay the thumb in this natural ramp, it gives you a lot of reach and almost a pistol grip, you know, in this sort of thrusting saber grip. And I said before, I really prefer the knife without the jimping because you've got just enough choil, just enough ramp, and the fat of your hand will make it absolutely impossible without exerting a lot of effort to ever go forward onto that blade. It's a different approach by Allen Elishewitz. Very efficient and very effective, I contend. Now if you go to a hammer grip, your hand can kind of be wherever you want it. It's hot spot free. Can you come forward? Yes, you certainly can for fine work. The draw cut grip, more comfortable than it looks with this sort of sweeping curve on the inside of the handle, but it's not uncomfortable at all. The reverse grip, again, very secure because of the way the fat of your thumb just sort of cradles that curve. I like it. I didn't know if I would. I'd heard and read some reviews complaining about the shortness of the handle, but I'm not going to ding the knife for that. I actually kind of like it. And just look at the hardware on this thing. I was a little surprised, maybe a little disappointed. Some internet listings, some other reviews of this knife have shown sort of a tooled pivot with some other work besides the hex head. This one does not have it. It's just a plain turned pivot, but so clean. And actually, you know, it matches the other side of the pivot. It matches the deployment button. I don't hate it at all. This is sort of a plain brown or plain black wrapper knife, and it works for me. All the hardware on the knife is stainless steel, and hexes are the pivot and the 4 body screws. The clip screws, however, are T6s, Torx. My one sort of my one issue with the knife is the clip. As you can see, as you're looking at it now, the tab end of the clip is rising a little bit. That is post rework by me. As it shipped, it was actually running down toward the handle. There was less than 1/8 of an inch between the frame and the end of that tab, which made it impossible to insert into a jeans pocket without 2 hands and a lot of wiggling. I took the clip off, and if you guys looked at my Instagram page yesterday, you saw a substitute clip. I did do this bend modification for the purposes of the video to show you what the factory clip looked like, and it does work a lot better, but still an insane amount of retention for a knife of this size and weight. And it just so happens, my friends, that the hole pattern on this Protech clip is exactly the same as this here Benchmade Parkerized split arrow clip. Now look at that. Just look at that. You got a big Parkerized clip, sort of Mega Emerson style, that takes up, gosh, what, 2/3 of that side of the knife? Guys, not for me. Sorry. It's still very hard to get in and out of pocket. Not hard to get started because I did move the end of the clip, but the retention's too heavy. And not only is it going to wear pants out, it's going to wear that anodizing out. Look at it. You can already see cotton laying in that texturing already. So the magic of YouTube is going to bring you an alternative. Hang on. Ah, much better, don't you think? Well, you know I do. Just look at that. Aren't the proportions so much better? I also kind of like the way the tip of that split arrow clip sort of mirrors the profile of the back of the handle. Yeah. And frankly, it's more comfortable with that clip. So that's how we shall leave it. Thanks, Chris, for shipping me that spare Parkerized split arrow. I knew I would find a use for it, and I did. I think it's going to stay that way. Feel free to share your opinions on that in the comments, and if you don't like it, I won't care. Just love this mechanism. You see anything missing from this knife that you're used to seeing on autos? What? There's a control missing, isn't there? Yep, no safety. You look at this knife. There you go. I see nothing. The button is completely flush, if not actually a little recessed into this cavity. Your finger does not get confused because you don't feel the pivot whatsoever. It is totally flush. So as you're looking to deploy, you just feel for the recess, which is very easy to find. Button, you do this with your eyes closed all day long. You'll never miss it, but you're not going to bump it and accidentally deploy the knife either. Kind of has the operation of a Glock pistol, doesn't it? Everything you need, exactly where you need it, nothing you don't. Pretty slick. Take a look at blade centering. I think it's about perfect. How about that? Tell you guys a little story. I live in Indiana, as most of you know. Just recently, actually not that recently, almost a year ago, new law went into effect in the state of Indiana. It is now completely legal to own, possess, and carry automatic folding knives in the state of Indiana. Now, I have owned a couple, haven't been able to carry them though. At least not if I was in an area where there was any risk of having to reveal that to a peace officer. But it's been a long time since I've actually had one in the collection. And I set out to buy one that was lefty friendly, so naturally the Doru was on top of the list. There were a couple Microtech OTF or out the front autos that were also on the list because they're ambidextrous. You can flip the clip to either side, and the mechanism, the handle, don't care which hand you're using. The other one was the Spyderco Citadel. You guys know that I'm a pretty huge Spyderco fan, and the Citadel, now discontinued, was very attractive to me and has a blade shape actually that's very reminiscent of this one, sort of that tactical / utility look to it. The Citadel, a little larger knife. It was a large Citadel that I was considering. Actually purchased one. There was a member of USN on the Cove that had several of them for sale. Police officer, I believe he was. And he had both large and small. I bought one of the largest from him, and man, I struggled with that knife for a couple weeks, and it had some major issues. The grinds, not only the primary bevel grind and the edge grind, but also, if you're familiar with that knife, it has a swedge sort of similar to this. All these grinds were completely asymmetrical. It didn't matter which way you looked at that blade, whether you looked at it from the spine, if you looked at the sides and compared them, saw where the flats and the swedges terminated. There was just nothing that was the same from one side of the knife to the other. And then where that became a real problem was that the blade centering, because of the grind of the knife being so off-center, the blade centering was horrendous. And I paid him about $150 for that knife, and it was just a disappointment. Also had some hardware issues, some pivot hardware that wasn't right. And good luck getting the Spyderco to work on that knife. I don't know exactly. It's a little foggy where that knife is made. It's stamped Spyderco USA CPMS 30V. It is not stamped Golden, Colorado, USA Earth. I don't know who makes it for them. In many ways, it's a really beautifully made knife, but the blade grinds are just absolutely horrendous. And when I contacted the seller because I knew I had more than one, and asked him to find one that didn't have these issues present, he really couldn't. They were all kind of jacked up like that. So I asked if he'd take the knife back, left a little money out of my refund for his trouble, and went on a look. And actually, as soon as that return was completed, I waited for Doru's to come in stock, left-handed ones, because they kind of make these in short bursts, and when they're gone for a while. So when Pioneer Valley Knife and Tool, pvk.com, had them in stock, I immediately pulled the trigger. Had a really good experience with Josh Burbank from PVK. Those of you who have been around the knife world for a while know that in years past there have been, if you cruise the forums, there have been some guys who've had issues with Josh. He's had life to contend with just like all of us, but it looks to me like PVK is running strong, and Josh is a great guy. And other than a minor little post office mishap that made this one a few days late, just a great experience dealing with Josh at PVK. And like most good online retailers, I was able just to send him a text before I bought the knife. I think this was not the only one he had left in stock, but I did have him physically inspect the knife that he was going to send me, and I had him check for grind symmetry and blade centering and all that stuff. He quickly checked it out, sent me a text back that all that stuff was perfect, and he was absolutely correct. So I got the Lefty auto that I wanted, and it's really awesome. I like it, and I like it a lot. The mechanism on this knife, I guess, I haven't had this one apart, but according to Protech's website and data sheet, it is a coil spring, and what a stout one. I mean, it smacks out there. It could smack harder if I had the pivot set up a little looser, but thwack. Of course, the standard button lock on most auto knives, you can see it right there. The locking side of the button protrudes from this scale. Now if I depress the button, you'll see it move out of the way. And then snap into place when the knife is fully opened and fully closed. Here, watch. There she goes, keeping the knife closed. So that button seats into two recesses machined in the blade tang to retain it, and then when you push it sideways out of the way of the blade, out it comes, and then it closes. Pretty standard stuff. Just thought I'd show you that. Some of you guys who aren't super familiar with autos, because they are kind of a forbidden fruit for most of us, YouTube is sometimes the only place we ever get to see them. Of the autos that I have owned and held, this is definitely one of my favorites. I like the slick operation of the double action out the front knife, but they always have blade play, and some of my viewers who have the same disease as I do probably, like me, are not going to be owners of OTF knives because they have blade play, and I can't stand blade play. Just can't stand blade play. So the Doru is a very welcome member of the knife world for me, the Lefty. Great job, Protech. I will keep you guys posted on how this thing holds up over time. I got a feeling it's going to see a lot of pocket time. That's all for tonight. Grace to you and peace, my friends, from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. And remember, the Word is sharp.